I have this, an updated one?
Yes,
Yeah.
came out today.
Got shortened.
Just
So we're not
one
doing
item was
this?
removed.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Oh,
Okay, I didn't hear that.
no. It was late
Okay.
for today or
Wow.
something.
I have a
I
motion
haven't been home since
motion to call the meeting
this
to order.
morning.
Make a motion?
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I
Opposed?
He needs new equipment.
Steve, is your chair falling apart?
Increase the budget on equipment.
There's plenty of good chairs over there.
No.
Okay, let's have a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We don't have a lot of things to be covered tonight. We'll see how long the meeting takes. Let's start out, however, with a recommended motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
A second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the agenda really consists, first of a recommended motion that approval be given to the letter of recommendation of Gordon W. Jones Associates, Architects on the district-wide capital improvement project held March 20th, 2012, totaling, I don't know if I can even say that number.
Well, and here's what I would like to do, just because there is, on bid number 108, we actually had a tie
That's amazing.
for the low bid,
Yeah.
very amazing. So, based on that, and since we have a meeting 2 weeks from tonight, and I'd like a little bit more time to review that more thoroughly, what I'd like to do is just give you a motion that would remove bid number, or contract number 108 from the package, and the total now would be, if you want to write this in, $18,771,025. 18771,025.
And that's removing,
It's removing contract number 108, bid number 108.
so that we can look into that further and go
Right.
over that again at the next
And
meeting.
that's the one that had the tie.
Correct.
Okay.
So I'd like to, have some time to review that a little bit more, make sure we're gonna make the right recommendation to you, so,
Okay,
that's what we'll do, we'll consider bid, 108, contract 108 removed, and then the total would be $18,771,025.
okay, so the recommended motion is that,
It
approval be
might-
given
it
the
might
letter of
change.
recommendation with a motion, say again?
It might change, I have to pull one bid for discussion.
Oh, okay.
Well, let's have a motion then, a
Alright,
second
we'll
motion, and then we can have
change.
discussion before we vote on it, how
Okay.
about that? Shall we leave the motion, and the initial motion as it was, and then we'll have the two adjustments to it before we vote on it, is that okay? So for the first motion as it was, we have such a motion,
So moved.
a second?
Second.
Okay, now let's discuss it, we have Steve's issue, so we're gonna remove bid number 108, is there anybody else who feels strongly or against or for that, in terms of removing that for discussion next time?
Nope.
Okay.
I
Which would
just
take us
have a
down to
general question
$18,771,000?
about the reports that we got. Is it appropriate to ask that now?
Absolutely.
There were several contractors that bid on these, and some of them, we had they had no bid. And I'm just curious, do these contractors, if we had no bid, why are they listed on here? Is it because they found out about it somehow, and then later on decided, after they got a package from us, that they didn't want to bid on it?
That's correct. I'm sorry, I'm Tim Merslow from Gordon Jones Architect.
Okay.
Yes, what we do is, as a practice, is that we list all of the bidders that pick up documents, and then whether they bid or not, they're still listed on here.
Okay.
So that's what that
Do
is.
you reach out to specific bidders? I mean, people that you've worked with before, do you
it's-
specifically reach out to them, or is it just posted in a general way?
Yes.
Both.
We do both, because it's a public bid, it's gotta be publicly advertised and out to the public. So we reach out to folks that we've worked with before, but we also invite anybody, and we had great interest on this job, which is really good. There was a lot of bidders that bid on the different packages that we had there, so.
Hey, do the contractors know that there's a high level of interest? Are they aware of who they're bidding against?
Yes, each bidder, periodically during the bid time, we had about 5 weeks, plus or minus, of bidding time. And we would send out the bidders list, the current bidders list, to all the bidders that are out there. And we do that for a couple of reasons. One is so that each of the, what we call prime bidders, the list that you see in front of you is prime bidders, can see that list and see who their competitors are, as well as subcontractors also get an opportunity to see the list because it's posted on what we call Dodge and Construction Exchange. Construction Exchange is a Western New York vehicle for it's a plan house. That's the best way to say it. It's a plan house. It's where contractors from all over the area can look at what's out there as far as construction jobs.
And I noticed with the bids that we received, at least the description that you give to us, number one, it's the amount, but number two, it discusses your experience with working with that group in the past.
For the base bidders, yes.
Okay,
For the base bids.
for the base bidders, yeah.
Okay.
Just kind of being new at this. What's the difference, or what's the addition when you have the base bid and then the alternate additions for each of the jobs? Just so I understand.
Okay, if you look at, we'll just look at 102. Can we look at 102 for just a second? Contract 102?
Yeah.
It's what we call, this is what we call a tabulation sheet. So the base bid,
Wait a minute, I'm not there yet. 102.
it's a roofing, it says roofing work, contract
Yeah.
102. The base bid, the first number is that, the first column, if you may, it says base bid, is what we identified as the base contract work. And then the alternate, R1, is if we ended up with a cost, if we were concerned about the budget, we're not concerned about the budget today necessarily, but at the time of bid, we weren't sure whether we were gonna have a low or a high bid. So we wanted to have room options. So, as if you were building your house, and you said, okay, I want an option to do a family room extension. This is like the option, the alternate R1 is that option, okay, to do the family room extension. Only in this case, what it was is, as described here, it's the, for the roof work, it was the 1996 addition that was done to the building. The roof over that, we figured, well, if we're in, you know, if the costs are in trouble, if we need to back something off, that roof was in the best shape over there of all the roof area. So we felt that was an option that we could live without if we had to go with only the base bid.
Okay, so for each of these jobs, this is additional work that, if for budgetary reasons, there's
need to be
cost overruns
concerned-
where you need,
Yes.
that gets lopped off and
Right.
the base work that was approved earlier gets done.
The good news is that all of the alternates across the board can be awarded. I hope that's apparent to you.
But the selection is made based on the base bid.
No, it's
Total.
it's on the total,
Okay.
on the total.
Okay. 104. It's awarded to Rodham Construction.
Yes.
I have a family member working there. So I want to pull that, even though they're not residing with me. I want to pull that one and not vote on it. I don't want to vote on it. I want to abstain. There's no,
Say it again, this is a firm that you're working with somehow?
no, I have a family member who works there.
Oh, so you don't wanna be involved in the
Yeah.
approval of that?
They do have nothing to do with the general county. As you know, my sister works payroll, but she does drop off the bids, does the running around. I just don't think it's appropriate. As
Mhm,
far
I
as,
appreciate
she's
that.
not making any money off it, I'm not making any money. And I know the owner, from growing up, so I think it's just best I not vote on it.
Mhm.
So I wanna pull that one.
To vote on separately.
Yes. The other one is 105. Alternate bid G5, which is quote the amount to be added to base price for labor, all material labor for door frames and hardware replacements in the basement area of Union Pleasant School. How can they say $380 is gonna pay for all those doors and framework and labor in the basement of Union Pleasant School?
Well, the alternate actually is for the hardware, which is the door keyways, and the idea is here that we're not, there's, the work is listed on the drawings.
We're not doing doors, we're just.
We're not replacing
Okay,
frames.
that's, so, because I see that some are up to $71,000, and I'm thinking, did that person
They
think
didn't
they were?
they didn't understand it.
Okay.
They didn't understand the bid.
The other one is alternate G3 on there, which is asbestos, which I know from the jail, that's a huge expense. Are they're comfortable with $141,000? So we're not gonna get in, let's say, 4 months, work order, change order for $9,990.
Well, you can, just if I may respond,
Yeah,
there's a few other bids that are within that same general vicinity.
yeah, that's something, because
So-
there's such a huge discrepancy on some of those, that's why I was,
Some people may not have known how to bid it.
okay. I just know asbestos is,
You can see that at least 3 of those are within $1,000 or so of each other.
I know from the past things we've done there, there's asbestos all over. And when you open up a wall, we're gonna do abatement, and that's a no-brainer. And just for my own well-being, what is the site work at Charlotte Avenue School with 103? I don't know what that is, that's why I'm asking. Do you know?
Oh, okay.
Blacktop?
What we're doing is along the front, where the Charlotte Avenue is, the
Yeah.
curb and sidewalk along there is gonna be replaced completely.
That's a safety hazard right now, yeah.
Right, so we're gonna replace all the concrete work along the front, west side of that building. We did not go after that in the last project.
Yes.
We are also gonna go after the courtyard, I'll call it the open court area. There's sidewalks in there, we're gonna go ahead and replace those sidewalks. We're also, there's a new requirement from the State Education Department that requires for any unit ventilator to have a hard surface directly outside of that unit ventilator. That has to come out 3 feet from the face of the unit ventilator. So what we're doing is we're putting, because there's a lot of unit ventilators in that school
Yeah.
with the heating replacement, so what we're doing is we're putting strips of asphalt along that area instead of having concrete here and concrete here and concrete.
Does that include the pre-K bike? 'Cause last bid we wanted.
We took care of that the
We
last
took it
time.
last time, I think we wanted to get it repaved, and we just got it kind of surfaced, didn't we?
We repaved that to the
Okay.
point where we don't wanna touch it again.
And I gotta ask, there's no basketball court, I think we nixed that last time, didn't we? There's no basketball court.
Right, but
Okay.
what we did do is we have to add a staging area for that space because of all the work that's going on. So back behind the gym, there's a staging area being put in. And instead of letting that just be stone, we did choose to put asphalt on it.
Also, you're killing 2 birds.
So
with one
if you wanna turn that into a parking lot later, you can turn it into a parking lot. If you wanna turn it into something other than a parking lot, that's your choice. But it will be paved.
stone. Okay. Now, is that, on the streets coming, my kids go, that's why I'm asking, but like, the street coming in, that floods out. And the kids are walking through literally 5-foot wide things of water.
Charlotte Avenue?
Charlotte Avenue, the driveway coming in. When you face the driveway, on the left, if the driveway's too higher and it goes into the sidewalks, do you remember that? And it fills up with water and the kids have to basically walk through the water. So that might be something we want to address with the, unfortunately, the change order, to have that ground up and repaved right.
We can take a peek at that, yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Sorry.
That's okay, now's the time. So the way I hear that, are we comfortable, making a separate motion? We'll have the first motion, with Steve's, with the 2 removed, we'll then leave Steve's out, and, we'll then vote on the 104 separately?
Yeah, I think we
Not
should,
the two.
we have 2, if we amend the motion to read contracts 102, 103, 105, 106, 107, 109, 110, and 111. And according to my figures, in the amount of $15,309,025, that will cover those contracts. So you can have one motion to cover those contracts with that amount of money. Then you would have a separate motion to approve contract 104 in the amount of $3,462,000. $462,000. That is contract number 4.
Your
And then
math is-
vote on that individually?
Vote on that individually,
you
so
can
then
abstain.
Matt will be able to abstain in that vote.
Okay.
And your math is correct.
Awesome.
Okay. So can we,
Okay.
request it?
Just one other
Yeah, I'm sorry.
issue, and it never even occurred to me, but our firm does business with half of these companies.
Can you personally make money off it?
No.
No. There's a difference.
Okay.
I have a family member that I would assume is getting paid by them to make money, I think.
Okay.
You're banking, right? So it's,
No, I'm in insurance, I'm in
Insurance?
employee benefits.
Yeah.
But our company, these are all recognizable names to me.
But they're not any of your clients. You know personally, you're not,
And you're not in direct contact with any of the,
I'm in contact with many of these people. Yes.
as far as benefits, but not for personal gain through payment.
Correct, that's correct.
there's enough, 1, 2, 3, there's enough to vote. Anyways, there's 4 to 7, that's enough. Correct?
Okay. Yeah, I
is-
don't know what the
would you-
threshold is for
I
abstaining from a
he's
vote.
fine.
It was easy when we were voting on banking. My card says First Niagara on it.
Would you see this as, would you see any of these as a conflict of interest?
None whatsoever.
Okay, then I think you're.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
fine.
free to vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, can I have a new motion that approval be given to the recommendations of the Gordon W. Jones Associates Architects on the district-wide capital improvement projects? The number 102, 103, 105, 106, 107, 109, 110, 111, to be totaling $15,309,000, and $25. Can I have such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Can I have all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, can we have a second motion that approval be given to Gordon W. Jones recommendations? This is on contract number 104 in the amount of $3,462,000. Such a motion?
Roll call vote.
Do it as a roll call vote, or just a roll call vote, or do it as a single
No, I
motion
can
and have,
abstain
and have
after.
him abstain? Oh,
I can
Roll call
abstain
vote?
after. I believe, right?
I
You can
I-
call a
I
roll
would-
call.
I'd prefer a roll call vote.
okay, let's have it as a motion that we do it as a roll call vote.
Yep.
A second motion? Okay. Matt,
Abstain?
Tom,
yes?
Patty,
Yes.
Joan, yes? Diane?
Yes.
Yes.
That's it, that's our group, okay. Beyond that, we have a budget discussion.
Yes.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I
Thanks.
appreciate it. We'll get to work right away.
Oh, we'll be seeing you a lot, I'm sure.
This evening, we have some further information. What we're calling this at this point is a preliminary budget leading up to budget adoption on April 17th. That's 2 weeks from this evening. So what we'd like to do is give you an update in terms of what's been modified since the March 20th presentation at the high school, based on what we heard there with feedback, a little bit more investigation, so some modifications there. Some of the total reductions in the preliminary budget, so you can see how we've totaled it up and what we're looking at in terms of those total reductions. Then also, New York State has a budget agreement which has produced a little bit more state aid than we had originally anticipated with the budget coming through. So we'll illustrate that and show you where we're headed for that. So, as we go through this, just in summary, this is the assumptions that we're using as we're putting together our presentation and the numbers for you. We're going to include savings from 13 teacher retirements, 3 clerical retirements, 1 nurse retirement, 1 computer aide, and 1 administrative retirement. So those numbers would be reflected in our budget reductions. We are attempting to limit reductions in staff according to contractual agreements as we have those agreed upon and as we bring them to the board. So we're hoping to see some restoration perhaps if these negotiations allow. The budget in this has applied the additional state aid to reduce the gap. So you won't see any further reductions, but we are using that additional state aid to continue to reduce the budget gap. Under our decisions in terms of what we've moved forward with at this point, and again, based on discussions that we've had and some assumptions we're making, is we're developing this budget on the maximum tax levy limit. Approximately 4.35%. We do have a change in the levy limit, maximum levy limit. Barb will review that with you as well because of some of the state aid distribution in the approved budget for New York State. We're continuing to negotiate with all of our bargaining units, and again, hopefully using some of these negotiations to avoid layoffs and reductions in staff. Where we did have retirements, we attempted to align these retirements with reductions to the greatest extent possible, so we're avoiding layoffs. So as we're looking at various reductions, if we could align those with a teacher retirement or other retirement, we have done so to avoid layoffs in those areas. And then also, we received approximately $313,000 in additional state aid. If you recall, we put in the budget prior to this approximately $150,000. So we just about doubled what we had in the budget before. So it isn't a $313,000 increase from the previous. It's a little over $150,000, about $163,000 additional dollars that we've included in here. And again, that's based on the generated projections that came out of the legislature after approval of the state budget. As we go further into the recommendations, we listened to a lot of the information from last Tuesday. We've looked at further where we could make some potential reductions, and part of it is an attempt not to impact one department or one area as significantly as we previously had. And so as we went through, we tried to look at some modifications in these proposals. So part of what we're looking at here is the idea to suspend the requirement of life skills in the health department as a graduation requirement. If we do this, and you'll see that we're moving from a 1.0 reduction in staff in the health department to a 0.6 reduction. So if we have a 0.6 reduction, if we remove the life skills requirement, we can still teach life skills, and we can still offer nutrition and stress management as electives in that department. So that's one of the considerations for the board to take a look at. We believe that a suspension would be preferable than just us saying that we are going to eliminate that, because we believe we need to look at the curriculum more closely. We need to study many areas of the high school curriculum, see where there's potential overlap or where there is overlap, investigate certain areas where credit for certain courses may be given through another area. So we need time to review that, and I believe 12-13 would be the time to make some solid recommendations to the board for the 2013-14 school year.
Can I ask a question about that
Yes.
at this point? When you say credit would be given in another area, you mean sort of one department gives credit for one kind of course instead of a different department, or
Correct.
departments work together? What do you mean?
Yeah, both of those. Departments can work together and look at, providing coursework together that may fulfill a credit. We may find in some of our courses that what we're teaching in the curriculum in the course may fulfill a requirement in another area. One of the areas to take a look at on that would be, the financial literacy course and economics, and whether or not we should look at a consolidation of that type of curriculum, or whether they stand alone. We don't know the answer to that, but I think it deserves a review.
I think as we listen to some of the things some of the students presented, they described what they were learning in life skills as having overlap with some of the financial literacy
Correct.
sorts of courses. And so,
Yeah,
whether those would be,
Mhm.
whether you wouldn't want to take the privilege to teach that from one person to another, or give it away from one department to another, but the fact that the two areas that's exactly what you're talking about in terms of the
Some redundancy there, yes. And again, both of those are required, so I think that, you know, we have to look at what it is we really, if we do want to require something of our students, what is it that we want to require, why do we want to require that, and what does it mean 5 years from now? Is this requirement going to be a continuous requirement, or does it have a lifespan because of certain technology or certain program or whatever?
When you say suspend something, how long does one suspend something?
I'm looking at this for the 12-13 school year in order for us to make a recommendation that would be impacting the 13-14 district budget as well as curriculum.
I don't mean to be dominating this, and I'll shut up after this, but I feel concerned that the life skills course is something that we approved. Patty would know. How many years ago did we, as a board, agree upon requiring life skills?
It was required way before I was on the board. I think it's been required for quite some time.
And yet the financial literacy, we added in last year, the year before?
Yeah.
I think we
It
were
was
very
two-
impressed by
it
the
I think it
program
was
that they
2
put
years
together.
ago.
But I feel a little bit uncomfortable to say that we suspend a life skills course that we've committed to for 10 years, let's pretend, and we hold in a commitment to a financial literacy course that the state doesn't require, that we approved a year or two ago. Now, sort of, that course only got going, we should allow it time to get up steam and do what it's supposed to be doing, and if we suspend it right now, we rip its legs out from under it the moment it's beginning to get started. But in some ways, if we as a board are saying, in these budgetary times, we need to be careful about what we require, and we should have our requirements matching the state requirements, we have to at least consider the idea of whether we should be, if we're suspending one, should we suspend the other? And I know Steve has some thoughts about that, I'm sure some other people have thoughts about that, but I just put it out there as something that I feel like we should think about anyways. You know, and I don't know, I mean, I'm sure the guidance counselors probably have a better idea about that, and the teachers and the principals at the school, because I'm sure the guidance counselors, as I say this, are quaking in their shoes because they already have 250 kids who are on waiting lists for this course or that course. You know, so I don't know how it impacts at that point, but I think it's worth discussing. What do you think, Bob?
I think if it was financial literacy we had in this curriculum 15 years ago, we wouldn't be in quite the problem we're in today.
We'd have a little bit better financial literacy?
That's kind of, we're kind of struggling with the whole budgeting process here, and I don't want to discount the life skills programming either, because those are, when you hear that health presentation we had from that whole department, it's a terrific program. So, I mean, I want all that for all my kids and everyone's kids.
Yeah.
But
somehow we have to make some
somehow there's got to
compromises.
be some decisions.
I like the concept that if you don't require life skills, you give a kid a choice of maybe choosing to take life skills or choosing to take stress management. And it may be a different kid who needs the stress management course than needs the life skills course. You know, so I like that.
You just say now just suspend it for the year, we'll take the year to figure out what we're gonna do in 13-14 and.
Correct.
But not just this,
And
everything.
it's not only, you know, financial literacy and life skills, but I think, you know, there is a significant amount of curriculum revision, reform going on with this SED agenda, their reform agenda. I think, you know, we need to take a look at where we are. We need to have our curriculum maps restored perhaps. We need to have it more defined. So that we don't have redundancy, particularly in a time where we can't afford teachers teaching similar courses just in different departments. So I think we need an alignment, we need a review of our curriculum and, you know, revision where necessary. And I think, you know, part of what we're looking at is with the health reduction, we still have the opportunity to offer stress management and nutrition if we suspend this requirement. We can fill up the classes of life skills, nutrition, and stress management. If we don't suspend the requirement, you know, we're going to have to eliminate one or both of those electives out of participation for next year.
Okay.
Again, I think, you know, important to keep in mind where we're heading for 2013 and 2014. And Barb, if you just want to address this bullet, you know, in terms of how you projected and why your numbers are where they are at this point.
Basically, what I looked at was where we believe our budget is going to end up, our appropriation budget is going to end up this year based on our maximum allowable levy limit that we are going to pursue. So taking that number and just doing some projecting, even though we're not exactly certain where the contracts are going to necessarily end up over the next couple of fiscal years, you can make some general assumptions that contracts for staffing and things for fuel and utilities and health insurance, when you take a look at it overall as a package, it seems to be increasing each year somewhere in the neighborhood of between 4 and 5%. So I took a conservative approach and looked at using 4.5% as probably where we think the budget, if things just rolled forward, would end up in 13-14. And then again, taking that appropriations number and adding another 4.5% to it for 14-15. It wasn't really anything super fancy. It's just sort of, it makes good sense. It's just to give us an idea of where we'd be going. You know, that's something in the neighborhood of, you know, $2.5 and $2.6 million increase each year.
So, would you say, you know, when we talk about the idea of, okay, if we had a rollover budget, here's the numbers that we would be looking at?
Mm-hmm.
And could you make that statement and say it would be 2.5 and 2.6 respectively for the next 2 years?
Yes.
If we kept all the programming the same, kept all our staffing the same, and roll those over, we've got a $2.5 and $2.6 million budget increase.
Based on what we're assuming our 12-13 budget to look like, not what would have been our rollover 12-13 budget, but what our actual appropriations budget is going to be for 12-13. Taking that and applying that as a rollover number.
Those are scary numbers.
Had we had our rollover budget roll over, those numbers would be even higher.
But that means, that's the amount of money we're gonna have to come up with more than we typically have, or we're gonna have to cut that many programs,
Well,
somehow tweak things that much more each of those years.
Taxes you might be paying.
Or increase taxes, or who knows what.
that is what you, when you look at, I know every year you look at your budget to budget increase, that's what that would be. It would be a little over, you know, about a 4.5% budget to budget increase. And that's not talking about necessarily what the levy would look like, because we certainly don't have any solid projection of what the revenue is going to do for 13-14 yet.
But is that an estimate of what our gap's gonna be next year?
That's not the
No.
gap, that's the
No,
total
no,
increase.
that's an increase in appropriations, because, of course, we're hopeful that when 13-14 rolls around, that Foundation A will be flowing again, and that perhaps if it's not, the gap elimination adjustment amount will be decreased, and so we're not looking at it from a revenue perspective yet, we're just looking at what the additional cost to do business is going to be.
And keep in mind, when Barb says it's a conservative increase, it's conservative from the standpoint that we don't expect it to grow more than 4.5%.
Right.
So we believe we have enough built in. If anything, we would hope that the numbers would come in less than that. So that's what we're talking about from a conservative standpoint. And you know, the most significant game changer is the tax levy limit. That is significant, and I think, you know, the system the way it is can't sustain itself. And, you know, we can't continue making reductions, and at some point, it's inevitable that we're gonna have to look at going over the levy limit. I mean, that, to me, if you look, it's inevitable that you have to do
Or
that.
fix something on the revenue side.
Unless the
Or on the expense side,
revenue
if
our revenue goes up,
Expense side, you're
You're not
gonna
gonna have
have.
the 4.5%.
All things remaining the same now,
Right.
you know, moving into 12-13, if we had the same set of circumstances applied to 2013-14, it's gonna be extremely difficult to stay below the levy limit.
It's not just us, every
It
district.
would be
too.
everybody.
I'm hearing, or maybe I'm wrong, but my vibes are as I hear the news about local communities. It sounds to me like there are very few people who are going over the levy limit, or trying to. Do we, and this is, I'm sure, too far-fetched to think about, do we anticipate that this is gonna be the kind of thing that for a year or two, towns will try to stay under the levy limit, and then they'll feel like they've stretched it as far as they can, and now's their chance to go over the levy limit? Is that sort of what we would anticipate?
I think it's gonna generate more discussion than that. I think it has to generate a lot more cooperative action between districts, looking at how BOCE's role may change. So I think it's an opportunity to kind of look at it from a different perspective instead of very parochial and just internally what we're going to do, but how do we start looking at different options? And, you know, I don't know what those look like at this point, but, you know, there has been discussion of a regional high school. You know, there are upsides and downsides of a regional high school, but that's part of the discussion. That typically tends to, I think, serve a more rural population a little bit better because, you know, we have our buildings full, but discussions like that will have to begin to take place because you cannot keep your cost increases going at the same time your revenues are remaining flat or even reducing.
Or regional transportation too.
Right.
But I think you're also gonna see as our neighboring districts start to really whittle away at their reserves, that they're not gonna have an offsetting revenue source, and that they too then are going to, I think you're gonna see it as in a pretty big movement where districts are gonna start to use up the reserves, and the only thing they're gonna have left to do is go over the tax levy limit with the supermajority vote, because there won't be anything left to cut, and there's not gonna be any money in the bank to spend.
Now, in part of what we're doing, keep in mind that, and this isn't going to impact 2012-13, but for 2013-14, we have property we're looking at, having it appraised. Those are some potential one-shot revenues that can come into the district to help offset some of the expenditure increases for 12-13, perhaps beyond, depending on how we budget that. You know, we need to take a look at our enrollment. We need to take a look at and further study if we're going to see a continual kind of loss, a small loss, but a continual loss, whether or not we reorganize. And that may come in many different ways. It's, you know, whether you look at the primary and intermediate grade levels, whether you look at, you know, the junior high school model that we talked about, whether you look at a realignment of a K-6, a 7-9, and a 10-12. So there are a lot of options, I think, that we have to explore to see how our school day works. Those have the potential of impacting transportation. So it does require, you know, some pretty significant thought, and I think that over this summer, that's part of the board goals to establish for next year is what areas do we want to look at, how do we want to study those areas, when do we want the recommendations to come forth, and then how we can set an action plan together to make that happen. Next, I just want to review quickly the budget process. This has been going on a long time. We've put a lot of information in front of the board, but just as a quick brief, about 2 to 3 slides. If you recall, back in November, we started with about a $3.5 million budget gap. One of the significant areas of this budget gap is that loss of the education jobs money. $1.2 million out of revenue for 2012-13 was very significant to us. That won't happen again. We won't have to continue to make up for that $1.2 million, but keep in mind, we lost $1.2 million in staff because of that. That money was all in staff. Again, we utilized expenditure reductions, moving to the maximum tax levy limit, minor fund balance allocations, but we've utilized all 3 of those strategies, which is really what a school district is limited to use when putting together a budget. Our reductions in spending include reductions in staff at all levels, but again, trying to minimize the impact by utilizing retirements where possible. January, we had the governor release his budget, which at that point we assumed would be the minimum amount of state aid we would get, and that was about a $476,000 increase. So that was used to lessen the budget gap. If you recall, we went through draft 1 of the budget. Those reductions included 18 teaching positions, 6 clerical, 4 teacher aide, 4 maintenance positions, and a central office reorganization in which we're going to look at a shared staff for Greg Davis's position. It also included $50,000 in athletics, a $20,000 reduction in extracurricular, and a $30,000 reduction in BOCE services that was throughout the budget. The process, because of the reduction in staff, does include increases in class size at all levels, including a reduced team at the middle school. Most of the draft 2 budget have been avoided because of where we are with state aid, our negotiations, and where we believe we have reduced the budget gap enough to avoid the vast majority of the draft 2, which were pretty significant if we had to move in that direction. And again, we are at the maximum levy limit in terms of our revenue generating from our community. Just to review now where we are, and again, based on feedback from the March 20th meeting, based on some additional discussions with staff and administration at the high school, we're looking at some modifications here. 1.0 FTE reduction in Spanish is still there. That was reduced in the original budget. We gave a reason for that in draft 1 budget. We gave the reasons for that. There is a Spanish retirement in the district. However, we also have a teacher of Spanish returning from leave, so it will result in a layoff of a 1.0 teacher at this point. We're going to continue with the reduction in science for the chemistry and labs. Again, we're going to look at the impact of the 1,200-minute requirement, and we'll need some strategies at the high school in terms of how to keep students on task, how to keep working on time, and what actions will be taken if we find students missing lab work that may lead to a potential graduation issue for students, and even a course passage issue. Modification, we went from 1.0 health teacher reduction to a 0.6 health, and again, that's from the life skills. If we suspend that requirement, then we can reduce that without impacting programs significantly, still have the choice. In terms of art, we've moved from a 1.0 reduction at the high school to a 0.4. Now, the overall reduction in art will be a 1.0 because there's a 0.6 reduction at the elementary level. If you recall, we talked about looking at elementary schedules because of the reduction in the number of classes throughout the district. And we've reduced elementary classes, I believe, by 8 or 9, so that will require less support in terms of art, PE, and music. So we're looking at 0.4 at the high school, but also 0.6 district-wide. In this case, we do have an art retirement as well, so there'll be no layoff associated with this. Music was very passionate at our meeting on the 20th, and so what we're looking to do, again, is combine the programs where we'll have a 0.4 reduction at the high school and a 0.6 reduction at the elementary school. Again, limiting the loss, will increase the number of students taking lessons. We'll reorganize our music department. I think that, just from some of the traveling teacher standpoint this year, we need to, step back and take a look at where our teachers are assigned to, what the impact is of traveling, and whether or not we can achieve some efficiencies there as well. Some new reductions at the high school, 0.4 FTE in technology. And again, will reduce the number of media production classes available at the high school level. There would be a reduction at the middle school level in staff because of the way that the seniority picture works for this. Yes.
You said media production, but then you said middle school reduction, but that means we still have the same support at the middle school?
Right.
It's just we shift somebody over?
Same support, but the impact is at the middle school level in terms of the least senior teacher.
Okay, because I know at the middle school level, people are worried because the number of kids in the classroom and the technology
Right.
classrooms.
We haven't reduced staff at the middle school level.
Thank you.
0.4 FTE reduction in physical education teachers, and again, result of slightly larger class sizes in PE. We do want to look at how our adaptive PE students are taught in phys ed, and this will give us an opportunity to take a more closer look and maybe become more efficient in doing that as well. So as we look through, and what I have on the next 3 slides is the total number of positions that are being reduced. We give you the area that they're being reduced in, or the program that they're being reduced in, so that you have an overall picture of what is taking place. So we've gone through the BOCES areas, and And typically the BOCES reductions are from, first of all, not utilizing some of this, but when we look at safety risk management and the behavior management consultant, remember, we went from a 1 day a week to a half day a week assignment in both those areas. So that's where that reduction has come. We know that we had some special education comments on that. Again, we believe that we're in a place where we can provide the appropriate consultation to teachers, to classrooms, as well as help, you know, the training of our staff. So it will be more difficult on us, but we believe we can also handle this reduction. Again, from, you know, the facility standpoint, we heard the impact of the reduction in facility staff at the meeting that we had at our middle school, our last regularly scheduled meeting. And we know that, you know, we're gonna have to reorganize there as well in order to make sure that, you know, we're gonna have our facilities covered, and we may have to delay certain things, certain repairs or certain upgrades at different times because of that. The photographer is, and that's, I understand that. Elementary classroom teachers, approximately 8.5. We have the team at the middle school level, that's why you see English teacher, math teacher, you see a science teacher, social studies teacher, that's the team. And remember, we're looking at the split team concept in the middle school at this point.
The elementary school teachers, how many of those are in retirements? Is that a significant number of retirements?
I believe we had, Rick, at the elementary level,
We can cover 5.
5. Okay? Science, and then when we look at the next 3 there, again, we talked about that art, PE, and music being a district-wide position because of the combination between high school and elementary school reductions. We talked about the technology teacher at the high school as well as the Spanish teacher. We have a retirement at the middle school level in family and consumer science. We still need to offer that to students there, but we believe we can offer that as a reduced from 1.0 to 0.8. So it's no impact. As a matter of fact, that's one of the only areas where we'll most likely be hiring it. We will hire a new family and consumer science teacher at the middle school level, but it will be reduced from a 1.0 to a 0.8.
Sometimes are there teachers who are, what, dually certified, such that they might be in a group that might be reduced, and yet they may be able to transition to a different place where there's
Yes.
a need?
Unfortunately, FACS is a pretty unique certification area. You don't see many dual certifications there,
In that
similar to the
particular
library,
place.
yeah, in this particular instance.
You aren't gonna find me helping out there.
You either?
We actually do have someone on a preferred eligibility list for FACS, and that will be a callback for an opportunity for that
Oh, is that
person
right?
to accept that offer.
Classroom teacher aides and monitors, district-wide, 4.0 reduction. Computer aides, 3 reductions. A special education teacher, remember, this is a consolidation of self-contained classrooms at Union Pleasant, and it's due to enrollment. Service will stay the same, we just have fewer kids to service. The last slide here, again, looking at clerical, 6 reductions in clerical staff. We went through a couple iterations of the bond refunding, so we settled at $50,000, and that's on an annual savings. $20,000 in extracurricular at the high school and middle school. We talked about the $50,000 reduction in athletics. Now, what you're going to see with this is a reduction, or this will be, it's not going to be reduced in the expenditure budget. And Barb, why don't you kind of go through that with the board,
Sure.
just to say, because of how that's being funded.
Right. The reason we can't actually take it out of the expenditure budget is because we still plan on expending the money. We just plan on having a new revenue stream from the boosters. So if you just put the revenue stream in and you took out the expenditures, you would find yourself in a position where you would not be able to expend, you can never overexpend your budget even if you have additional revenue. So you have to ensure that it's in your appropriations budget so that you can expend it, but you want to have an offsetting revenue.
I'm confused by that, because as I speak with the boosters, my understanding is that they are eager to work as a group together, helping us to fill in gaps. But that there's some people who say that $50,000 can be supported by their boosters. There are other people who say, no, the boosters are willing to help us get uniforms, they're willing to help us get some equipment, they're willing to help us with this, but that 50,000 gap to a large degree still needs to be figured out in the finances of of athletics. I mean, I think that the boosters, and I may be speaking out of line, but I know I've spoken with some other people. I think the alumni association, et cetera, feels like they want to be using their money to support scholarships and to support equipment and to support everything across the board in the district, and don't want to feel like they're in any way pigeonholed, despite the fact that they really support the athletic program, into feeling like they have that $50,000 sitting on their shoulder.
No, and we're not,
That's how I understand it as well.
right, but at least the conversations I have, we're not looking for the foundation to fund the $50,000. This is similar to the music work that we have through the foundation, where it is a 105.3C, C3,
501c3.
105H, 501.
You've been
Just like
doing
the
too
other,
much
that's all.
negotiating.
So we have that, and that allows you to raise money and accept donations on a tax-free basis. So it's deductible for folks. So part of, at least the strategy from my understanding is that there is going to be fundraising that will go along. There's going to be strategies to look at how to bring in $50,000 to support the teams. The discussion in the athletic department is how do we make this a district-wide responsibility and not, if you recall, the original proposal was a reduction of 5 teams. So it's not about 5 teams coming up with this money to support their program, but it's a matter of our athletic program coming up with the funding to support athletics in total.
And I have no concept, but, I mean, I don't know, I mean, other districts who have the community doing a lot of support in terms of booster clubs coming up with the athletics, how much money do they come up with? I mean, you know, if Amherst has a huge booster club and they come up with a lot, and people are donating all sorts of things, what do they come up with? Do they come up with $50,000 worth of money? That sounds like a lot of money. I mean, is that feasible to
I think it's a lot of money, but I also think, you know, when you look at some of the activities we have going on, a spaghetti dinner last week, the week before we had pancake breakfast. You know, I think we have to come to agreement